All right, everybody, welcome on back. Matt Santangelo is with us, Martino Puccio, here to discuss some Milan. They just ended their preseason tour in the USA yesterday after a 1-0 loss to Barcelona. Everybody freaking out around, 12:30 at night for many reasons. But how have you been? Nice break. I know you're going on vacation tomorrow, so we wanted to get this in before you headed on out. But how's everything been?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. I mean, it's some of these late starts on the West Coast for these summer friendlies has been a pain. I didn't stay up for the game. I watched some highlights this morning,
Yeah.
and just a couple parts of the game, but more or less, yeah, like the 11 o'clock start. Like I can't do it,
No, totally understandable when it's not really like the main starting 11. Not even, I think Leao played 90 minutes, which was just totally bizarre. I think the overall management of his minutes, like, or even some of the starters' minutes, like that first game against Real Madrid, like players were in for over 60 minutes. It's a very odd rotation. Um, Not that it matters too much, but no major injuries at all. Davide Calabria will be fine. They just did it as a precautionary reason as to why he was not
man.
playing. Um, so I guess just overall thoughts for the preseason tour is what we're going to be getting into, and then obviously some of the sales or rumors of sales that have been discussed or have already gone through. And we'll just cover that within the next 15 to 20 minutes. Hopefully, we don't go over like we usually do. But yeah, I mean, like, let's get it started. The first half against Real Madrid, it was really nice. The 2-0 lead at that point. They ended up losing, but it is what it is. I thought, the defensively was clearly the biggest weakness out of everything that we've seen so far. But at the same time, when you have a brand new midfield that really just has a lot exposed, and there's not a true defensive midfielder at the moment, which is a separate issue, it's going to leave your center backs exposed. There isn't as much chemistry to make these proper decisions. You see that kind of getting worked out with Mike Magnan in some of those clips during training that have been going around. So I think overall the expectation for people to just think like everything would have been seamless already is just kind of silly in my opinion. And not every single player that they have signed or brought to the US was playing, like a Noah Okafor amongst others, and obviously Samuel Chukwueze. So not seeing those players is obviously a bigger difference. And so with that, listen, you don't really have any injuries. You had some good offensive football. Tijani Reinders looked incredible. If you want to take away from much of that, I do find something very interesting yesterday. From yesterday, in my opinion, no Adley or CDK getting any minutes against Barcelona. Adley, not really as surprising. We've heard some rumors of his exit. CDK, not so much. At this point, you're not getting minutes in the preseason against Barcelona in something that is incredibly meaningless. Um, what gives?
That's a mystery, right? I think Adley is more clear cut. I think we've known that since last season when it became very obvious that Pioli didn't really feel that he can contribute enough that warrants those minutes. So we kind of knew it is inevitable that Adley's going to be leaving. I think it's pretty obvious. I think they're asking for like 7 to 8 million, which is about what they spend on him to get him from Bordeaux. The CDK situation is a little bit more interesting, right? Because there was talks a couple weeks ago with PSV, and as we mentioned, I don't think PSV are going to come up with a substantial enough offer that's going to come close to Milan's evaluation, despite the hit it took last year with the down year for CDK. But now there's talk of Atalanta, right? Which is a little bit frightening. I mean, Atalanta do have some money to spend, right? They just got the one kid from Almeria to replace Højlund, who's on his way to Manchester United. And so it looks as though they're going to continue to keep churning out, newer players that come in, go the
And then
whole
sell
buy
them to
low,
the
sell
Prem.
high profit.
Jeremy Boga as well
Yeah,
was another player who left. I think he went to Nice, so they already cut
yeah,
ties with him. So
yeah.
there needs to be, and there's rumors of Zapata leaving as well. So
Well, Zapata's more he's more on the aging side. Like I think he's
sure, but just
past 30,
as
a
in
little bit
terms
more
of
injury
needing
prone.
to, yeah, in terms
But
of needing to replace
yeah,
players.
no, of course. And I think look, just to kind of tie it all back to Milan's situation, right? Because I think we touched on this with but there a couple weeks ago when we were talking
Yeah.
about all the Chukwueze and Okafor and all these sorts of guys we're getting and how great it was, but that Milan still have an uphill battle getting rid of some of their dead weight slash players that they don't really feel fitting into the team, right? Rebic, he's gone to Besiktas, that's done. Milan get the wages off the books, which is more important than the fee, which is very minimal that they're getting from the Turkish team. So now you still have Origi, right? What's the future hold looks like? Maybe it's potentially still Saudi Arabia. I think Steven Gerrard's team is looking at him. Who knows? But yeah, the Adli and CDK situations are very interesting because I think they're two of the final players on the team that I think can get you substantial amounts of money. Of course, I think you get more for CDK than Adley, but I think ultimately, if you're able to sell those two players, now the conversation becomes that you just mentioned. No DM. Do we get the DM? Do we get a Dominguez type? Do we get someone like that? Krunic could be sold to Fenerbache. So there's a lot of movement in the last days of the market that I think ultimately could present more opportunities for Milan to really round out this team and get this team ready to go.
And that's kind of the beauty of preseason, because with some of the guys that you have, and we didn't even see Musa as well.
Yeah.
He's landing today in Milan. This is being recorded on Wednesday in the middle of the afternoon. So his medical should be completed, and then the announcement Thursday. So for me, I mean, again, I think defensive midfielder wise, not overall player in terms of versatility, Musa is better for that position. Even then, he's still not a true CDM. So with that, we can go to the Krunic part of this. So the rumors was that he's already agreed to a deal with Fenerbahce. Whether we know that's true or not, we have no idea. These are, again, just rumors that we're reading and hearing about, not the most reliable of reports, but there have been quite a few of them coming from Turkey and Italy. The rumored price is around 10 to 15 million, and what Milan is asking. They paid around 10 million years ago when they got him from Empoli. The amortized value at this point would see them make a profit. I think he's been a good servant for the club, helped them get into top four multiple times, filled in Champions League spots when there was virtually no one else. And I also thought he was a key figure to step in when players were missing at the beginning of their Scudetto winning season. So for me, I think moving on from Rade Krunic at this point makes sense if Matt, like you were talking about, you get a Dominguez in. If you can secure a true defensive midfielder with the sale of Rade Krunic, I think it's a home run move, honestly. And it's no disrespect to him. He's peaked as a player, especially at Milan. I don't think you're going to see anything more than what we've already seen. And that's perfectly okay. Certain players have their limitations. And getting a player like that from Empoli, listen, man, he exceeded expectations. He was one of the more underrated signings in that Maldini Masada era. Would you make this deal? And especially if it guaranteed a Dominguez, and the pronunciation of the midfielder from Lecce escapes me, so I'm not going to attempt it. But he also has been kind of rumored in that picture. Would you do this deal?
So I think it's the money. It really comes down to the money, right? I think ultimately we can talk about how much we like the player. He was a great servant to this club. I think he's a consummate professional. You never heard anything in the media or rumors that he was upset or he was saying things he wants more playing time. The type of player that like a Jack Bonaventura, the Juraj Kuchkas of the past, where it's like they keep their head down, they work, they're not in the media, and you wish them well when they do leave the club. If it's 10 to 15 million, even if it's somewhere in between like 12 plus 2 in bonuses, I think that's a really good return for Milan. And I think in his perspective, he's looking at the entire reshaping of this midfield, and he's thinking, yeah, Reinders in there, you got Loftus Cheek, you got Musa, Pobega still there. Like I'm at best, I'm 4 or 5 on the depth chart. So he really isn't going to get minutes. And I think at this point in time, you feel like the cycle ends at Milan, and he can kind of go somewhere like a Fenerbahce, where he probably will be a starter. I don't know what their team looks like. I'm not going to claim I do, but I think ultimately he can find himself getting more substantial minutes at a big club. Fenerbahce have a really good environment. They have a really good club culture. So I think he'll have an opportunity there to really showcase a little bit more and have this new challenge. But I think the one concern that I do have, and we sort of saw this in 2017, where we had the Mirabelli Fassone summer, where you have wholesale changes up and down the team, and it's essentially a new roster, right? We have our core players, but more or less you're talking about 7 to 8, 9 guys that are going to be new on this team, and you have potentially a whole brand new midfield cast, which has been
it technically is if he goes and Benacer's out till January. You're right,
but then you also throw in the factor that the midfield, when you had Kessie, you had Tonali, you had Benacer, for large parts of these past couple seasons, like your midfield has been your foundation, the area of your team where you're like, if we're lackadaisical defensively, if it's only Leao up front doing anything, at least that midfield, we know we can maybe run the game through the midfield. I just get a little concerned when you make too many drastic changes and you start to shy away from stability and foundation in certain key areas. In the midfield, a lot of games are won in the midfield. Now, I'm not saying Krunic is a guy that wins you games in the midfield, but this is a player that can play in multiple different roles for us. He scored some pretty decent goals for us. The goal against Verona a couple seasons ago, that was a key game where we couldn't get anything. He gets a free kick goal, and we win that game, I think, 2-0.
Thiago Dolo had the other.
Yeah. And Thiago Dolo had a great goal in that game. But I think, ultimately, that's where my concern is. I think the fee is going to drive everything. You won't find anybody saying, how could you pass up a $15 million offer? I get all that. But that's my one concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's only natural in general. But at this point, when you have that much turnover in the midfield, what difference does it make? I guess if Krunic leaves, and Krunic isn't really that guy. All these other players have higher upside, and I even think that includes Tommaso Pobega. So again, I just want to cover this one real quickly. We knew this happened. We'll keep it very short on this. Ante Rebic went to Besiktas. I talked with Ali Fisher about it. Go and check out that video. We covered that more a little bit extensively. This was actually a scoop of theirs. So kudos to Sempre Milan and Ali and the crew. Listen, they're taking a little bit of a loss. Wages off the book. A nuisance within the dressing room as well. This was just a player at this point in time that wasn't contributing on the pitch. He was a nuisance off of it, as we knew, and the wages were very high. So Milan had to bite the bullet. Besiktas wasn't obviously going to pay that much for a player that would be one of the higher paid players in Turkey. I know sometimes they pay up a little bit, but at the same time, you have to cut your losses. You get the wages off the book. In the long term, it'll work out better for Milan, but in the short term, it hurts the finances just a tad. I will say this, Ante Rebic on his best days was a key contributor to reviving what Milan was. He was a key contributor in the top four chase that first time when they finished second behind Inter, and then obviously in their Scudetto winning season, and then it all fell apart at the seams, and much like his time with the Croatian national team, it left a bitter taste in your mouth at the end of it, unfortunately for him. But overall, what is your sense of this move? I think this had to be done, right?
100%. I think it was pretty apparent throughout the season where, Rebic would come in, and I think he had to be 2 or 3 goals on the year. I think he had the 1 goal against Salernitana, which was a dreadful game. Great goal. He had a bunch of those in his locker throughout his time at Milan. I mean, he had some notable belters against, Juventus, Inter. Well, not like a great goal against Inter, but it's still a big key goal against a rival. The left-footed goal against Roma. I think I was at the Olimpico. So he had some very key moments for Milan and matches where, look, the fact of the matter is we didn't have much of anything going up front. And he was the one that would get a goal or 2 goals or an assist or a goal. And it's like, those are the types of performances that I look back on. And I look at how he came on really strong in the second half of a lot of seasons where, it's a lot of natural regression can occur, tired legs, maybe, regression to the mean. And he was a player that if you actually look at his first 2 seasons at the club, I think his first year he had 11 goals and a couple assists. And I think his second year he had the same goal output as well. So for a player that really wasn't a true starter for Milan, he had some pretty big key goals. And you can't really take that away from him. I think he was just a kind of very Jekyll and Hyde enigma type player where he can look the best player on the field at one point for you. And then he could do certain things where you're like, that happened. I can't believe
the red card against Juventus in the Coppa Italia.
Yeah,
where I'm not sure it was in the final. It might have been. It was a semifinal because Napoli won it with Gattuso. That's what it was. And
look at certain things like that, and you're like, wow, this guy's good, but man, it's too sporadic. Yeah,
sporadic. Yeah, listen, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Is all I'm going to say. I just didn't appreciate kind of how his tenure ended. Sales continue just a little bit more with this conversation because it'll fuel some of the other stuff that we need. And I just wanted to talk about it. Final topic before we head on out here. So here's my thing. Love the starting 11. I really like what we could bring. Depth scares me. Okay. Right back situation. Yeah. Very under talked about. I think it's not everyone, We need a defensive midfielder. We need another striker. We need a backup left back. Those are all well documented as like the number one spots and priority that we need.
Right.
Right back doesn't get brought up enough like that, in my opinion. So when you have Davide Calabria, injury prone, decent player at best, in my opinion. Florenzi, love the guy in his past, but it might be a little bit too much right now. He consistently gets injured. You just can't rely upon that. Then you have Pioli. We all know this, who has said, and it's obvious that Kalulu is the third choice center back. So your third choice center back cannot also be your third choice right back. It just doesn't work. When injuries happened, he gets moved up in the order one way or another. And when your main center backs are Tomori and Chow's first season as a full flight starting center back in a top league with these expectations, there's going to be some issues at times, especially at his age. I love his talent. I love what he could bring. It's just going to happen. Nobody can deny this. It happens to Tomori, who's way more experienced. And some people are worried about, and I understand. But then you have like Alexis Salamakers. Salamakers, if Junior Macias is on the way out, would be the backup right winger. And I know Pulisic is there and all this, but like he should be the number 10. We don't know what the solidified 4-3-3 is. There's rumors of Singo, but Singo isn't also a true back four right back. Salamakers and Kalulu as a depth, to me, is meh. I think Kalulu's best position should be a right back. I've said this for a while now, but that's not in the plan. That's what has been said. I'm going off of what the manager says. And it's funny because we saw yesterday when Calabria is out, who's the first guy off the bench because Florenzi can't give you 90 minutes? It's Kalulu.
Yeah.
And I know they got Jimenez from Real Madrid. He's going to the Primavera. There's a lot of question marks there. I worry about it. I'm not sure who they could bring in at that right back spot. I think they're probably just going to use these backups. I'm just saying long term, I'm a little worried about it. Mm-hmm. Left back, Fenerbache can't make up his mind. There's rumors that Fulham are going to get another left back, and it was actually rumored to be Pellegrini, but Pellegrini was also rumored to come here. So who knows? Ballatore prefers to stay within Serie A. Very strange situation. That's why I hate the reporting out of Italy. Nothing is concrete or makes true sense. And then, I think center back is obvious because Simon Kjaer, it's going to take a lot for him to get into shape. But, father time is undefeated, as they say. And with the way Milan play and that pressing system, what really hurt Romagnoli towards the end of his tenure was his lack of pace and ball recovery speed. That might be a huge issue. And then when Gabbia went out the door as well. So your just overall thoughts of plugging in these holes, like what is your priority? I know you mentioned CDM. Is it left back? Is it the other striker? Because now if Inter close in on Scamacca, they have 3 guys that are better goal scorers, in my opinion, than our best 9. And that worries me. So
given what, it's interesting too, and we've had weeks and weeks to reflect, right, on the sort of like reaction and feeling like after the fact of Sandro Tonali getting sold and how like that feels. And from an emotional standpoint, it obviously hurt in that moment, but looking at the amount of players we've had to bring in, looking at the amount of players that we have to add to the bench, it only made sense that someone had to go, and it had to be a player that can fetch us an amount that can really fuel this market. And without a Tonali sale, you're going to have 3 to 4 players come in, and it's going to be a market reminiscent of last year. Yes. So from that point, I understand it, right? So tying it back to now the current times and where we are at in the first week of August, and the season being a couple weeks away, how we have all these points, all these spots to fill on a team, as you just mentioned. Yeah. It is concerning. It is concerning because I think people have looked at, we got this guy, got Reinders, he looks good in preseason. We got this new revitalized attack. That's all fine and well, but we know that the long season of Serie A, it's a marathon. You have the Champions League, you have Copa. Like, you need to have at least 17 to 18 people deep on this roster. So that's what's going to be interesting to me, is how they fill these last final spots of the team. I'm hoping that guys like Ballatore just kind of cut their losses and take a move somewhere. But sometimes when you pay them as much as you do, you lose a little bit of negotiation power. We saw that with Rebic. We're seeing that with Origi. So even with Macias being injured now, I don't know what's going to happen there. So again, Milan have a lot of work to do on the sales side, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it over the next couple episodes.
Yeah, and just quickly on the Junior Messias thing as well, there were some recent updates. The Fenerbahce offer is very low. It's around 2 to 3 million euro, which is just ridiculous in my opinion. But Torino is also interested. They've been interested. And the funnier thing is that Messias does want to stay in Italy, so that might help Milan within this situation. But Cairo is obviously not someone that is easy to negotiate with.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, it is very funny, and you raise a fantastic point. I have 2 points to give you praise for. The second one you'll know. So the first one is this: the point in like wanting to fill all the holes in the squad and all Milanisti agreeing that you need to fill holes in the squad. It had to happen.
Yeah.
Simple. Unfortunately, if you want to keep the core of great players together, out of all the players that are super valuable, you could argue Benacer maybe have been more expendable, but
But
he
you
wouldn't
wouldn't
have
have
fetched
fetched the money.
exactly. You wouldn't have fetched as big of a fee. And secondly, to just go circle back real quick on Inter and Scamacca, this guy said the second that this deal happened, whether it was on State of Play, whether it was on in the State of Play chat with Pet, Scamacca would be back within a year to Italy. And
Yeah.
lo and behold, he was. I don't even think he was that bad at West Ham. It was just, you're right. It was a terrible decision. Um, they didn't really know how to like utilize his skill set. They were also dreadful. He did really well in the Conference League, but that's about it. Him going to Inter is like a good step for him. I think the fee that they're going to be paying is also one of the better deals in the market, given the fees for Rasmus Højlund. Højlund never had as good of a season as Scamacca did at one point. I know the age difference is varying, but kudos to you on that. Nailed the head on the head on top of the Vlahovic one as well. So praise to Matty Strikers over here. Any other final notes or anything? Thoughts on the preseason tour? Are you
Yeah.
looking forward to anything? We are about a couple of Mondays away from the first match against Bologna at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Tijani Reinders. I thought he in the moments he appeared in the 3 games against Madrid, Juve, and Barcelona this entire U.S. tour, he looks to be one of the few players that we've brought in that seems to be settling quickly.
Yeah.
And again, I know you have to be, a little bit cautious with how much you judge preseason, but I think just the movements, like the way he's getting the ball and that first touch and that first move forward, he's so press resistant. He's doing so many things that I think ultimately it's going to help Milan and Pioli play this sort of quick, progressive, drive type of football we want to play. And then I think that's ultimately going to be something that sees him get more goals, which I know that's a big thing that he can add. But I just wanted to give Tijani that shout out there because I think he's a player that really can make the difference for Milan, during the season.
I think he looked like the best player out of all the new
Yeah.
signings. RLC had some good moments.
Yep.
Pulisic also as well, I would say. Guys, try not to stress too much. This is the main reason as to why they're not going to win the title, in my opinion, this season. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of holes to fill. They're still pretty young. And I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear, but you also know what they weren't able to do. Just simply spend a ton of money where they add to what the team was last year and that they don't have to worry and that they're going to win. They simply couldn't. And there's certain paths that you have to take as a Serie A club and to build this core and try and continue to move forward. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. So overall, I would give it like a 6.5. They didn't win a game. The defense looked shaky. I understand that. But overall, there were some positives to take away. Get Musa in, get Chukwueze assimilated as well. There's a couple more preseason matches to be played. And
the defense. One quick thing, the defense.
Go for it.
Yeah, my lord. I know it's preseason, but man, the defense looks bad. And it's something that we've noticed for the past couple of years. We have purple patches of form where the defense looks strong and solid. That is a pretty big concern for me. If a Tomori is error prone and goes down, or if Malik Chow shows growing pains and he's not quite ready, no Gabbia, Kair's week to week at this point, you don't know what he can give you. Can he give you 90 minutes over 2 straight games when you have, a Saturday and a Sunday and then a Champions League? I don't know. So they have, call me a liar, 4 more players to add. Right, left back, to your point, right back. They need another central defender. I think the kid that's going to Juventus or supposedly
Facundo
going to
Gonzalez went to Juventus. But
and
in all honesty,
potentially another
Yep.
midfielder, and they even talked about a center forward. So like, I mean, this can be essentially a market that you see 10 new players, 11 new players come in.
And with that comes a lot of growing pains. And I will say Facundo Gonzalez going to Juve makes way more sense for that kid and his future than it does to come to Milan. To be quite honest with you, the situation just makes way more sense. But Milan have great scouts, so they should be able to figure something out, and we'll see what works. Giancarlo Simic, by the way, just want to say that first preseason game against Real Madrid, man, I just want to say when you're thrust into the fire like that, Ali and the boys at Sempre Milan cover it fantastically. And Scout 7 Calcio on Twitter said Stuttgart was devastated to lose him. And there's a reason for that. Hopefully we figure out something for him in his future. Overall, I'm still pretty excited. Bet a lot of overs this coming season involving Milan and both teams to score. I think that would probably be your safest way and avenue to bet things. We will be discussing that a little bit more. But thank you guys so much. Get us to 3,000 subscribers. Matt and I appreciate it. Oh, and lastly, with the audio stuff, we're trying to get a name for the podcast and try and upload all these episodes audio-wise for all of those people who have asked about that and want to see or listen to the show on an audio platform. Matt and I are trying to work on a name.
If you have a name, throw it in the chat. Throw it in the comments.
That exactly. I was also going to say that. This is the chemistry we have. You read my mind. Comment below. Comment what you thought on the preseason tour. Are we overreacting, underreacting? What are your number one needs that Milan need to make? And thank you guys so much for all of this. We've had a really great summer doing this. We really enjoy every single video that we put out and appreciate all the support. Other than that, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.